Hey friends! My name is Desiree, aka Mama Friendly, and I do all sorts of videos on my channel, cooking videos, vlogs, hauls, Disney content, a little bit of everything. So if any of that sounds like fun to you, I hope you'll subscribe and join me on my YouTube adventure. Kiddo's running around with the iPad, so let's do our best to focus right here and not worry about any background noise. I decided that today would be a great day to make sort of a fall-inspired recipe. I've been pre-recording my videos a lot this year, and so I'm not sure exactly when this one's going to be coming out. But today, the day that I'm recording this, is actually the beginning of pumpkin spice season. If you know, you know. And so I figured, what better day to do something fall-inspired? And the other thing about that is that no matter when you are watching this, it will very much be pumpkin spice season. So happy PSL day to all those that celebrate. Today I'm going to be making a super easy sheet pan meal. It's going to have the flavors of maple and sweet potatoes and Brussels sprouts, just super autumn-y type flavors. But it's also going to come together really easily on only one pan, and all we have to do is chop and mix some stuff. I already have my oven preheated to 400 degrees. I've got my sheet pan lined with parchment paper just to make cleanup a little bit easier later. You don't have to do that, but I'm definitely doing it. And so let me show you the very few ingredients that we're working with today. First of all, we have 1 pound of Brussels sprouts that I'm just going to trim up. We also have 2 medium to large sweet potatoes. Mediums will be fine though. And I'm going to chop those into bite-sized pieces. 1 red onion. Now, I couldn't be bothered to actually chop the onion myself, so I bought pre-chopped. I'll probably end up using about half of this container. We're also going to need 3 tablespoons of olive oil, 2 tablespoons of maple syrup. Now, I don't have real maple syrup on hand. I'm going to use what I've got, which is this pancake syrup, so it's maple flavored. If you have actual real maple syrup, by all means. I usually do, but they brought me this as a substitution whenever I bought it and I did groceries, and so I'm using what I've got. We're also going to need 2 tablespoons of Dijon mustard, and we're going to salt and pepper to taste. Did I not mention that we need 2 chicken breasts? We also need 2 chicken breasts. And don't be alarmed by the date. These were frozen and thawed for this recipe. So I'm going to do everything basically in a bowl. And I'm also going to use my cutting board and a knife. You could just use a plate if you don't want to dirty your cutting board, whatever works for you. Into this bowl though, I'm going to add in 2 tablespoons of my syrup, which again, ideally you'll be using actual maple syrup, but we're using what we've got. So that's 1 and 2 of the maple syrup and 2 tablespoons of Dijon mustard. We're gonna having some nice squishy mustard ASMR right there. All right, 2 tablespoons. I'm just gonna mix both of these together because these are gonna act as sort of a marinade / glaze for our chicken breasts. And the chicken breasts you could leave whole. I am going to try my best to actually like butterfly them or just split them in half because I want to come away with 4 pieces of chicken total here. And cutting them this way looks very precarious and dangerous, and I'm definitely not recommending you do it. But if you watch my cooking videos, you know that I'm constantly, whatever the opposite of boasting is about my knife skills, I'm always warning you that my knife skills are abysmal, and I don't even know if they're bordering on dangerous at this point. They're probably just straight up dangerous, but cutting them thin-wise like that rather than cutting them horizontally also means that the chicken is going to cook more thoroughly and more evenly, and that's never a bad thing. So I'm using kitchen shears. If I had only a knife to do this with, you could just press your hand down and run the knife along it. And that's probably the safer way of doing it. But I love my kitchen shears and I use them every chance I get, so why not now? There we go. Boom and boom. And even if they're not the most beautiful thing, that's fine. We're here for the flavor, not the aesthetic. You've just touched raw chicken. Wash your hands. I'm gonna stir this up to give it a nice little coat in our mustardy, mapley flavor situation here. And I'm going to set that aside. Next thing I want to do is trim up these Brussels sprouts. So for me, that means I'm going to cut off the little stemmy hard ends that are not very tasty. I'm going to take off these outer leaves because they're ugly, and I'm going to cut them in half again so that they cook a little more evenly. These very, very large ones, you could cut them in quarters if you want to. The size itself is not as important as uniformity. You want them to be as close to the same size as possible because then they'll cook at about the same pace. And one thing about me that may or may not be a controversial take is I love roasted Brussels sprouts, but I especially love them when they're like on the verge of being burnt, when they're almost too cooked. So I'm leaving these a little big, mostly out of laziness, out of not wanting to continue chopping. But as far as I'm concerned, the teeny tinier the better, because that means more surface area, and it also means more crunch factor at the end. If you wanted to, you can set these aside into a second bowl so that we can finish prepping them in that bowl. But I don't want to dirty any more than I have to. I'm trying to keep this as easy breezy as possible. So I'm putting them right onto the sheet pan because the vegetables are going to pre-cook a little bit before we put the chicken on. And so I'm going to use that very sheet pan to season and mix up the veggies before they go into the oven. This feels like a lot of waste, and maybe it is, but this to me is not tasty and I'm not going to want to eat it regardless, so maybe I'm wrong, but I'm tossing this out. Compost it, feed it to your chickens, what have you, but it's not going to end up on my plate. Upon closer inspection, these are not medium sweet potatoes. These are actually pretty big, especially this one. So I think I'm going to set the smaller, the thinner one aside, and I might just use this one big sweet potato for my meal. I'm going to cut off the ends again. It's a textural thing for me. And I'm going to cut this in half. Very precarious, not very demure, certainly not very mindful. Now that it's in half, it should be a lot steadier. And we're just, again, going for bite-sized pieces with a focus on uniformity if possible. Because the closer in size the pieces are, the likelier it is that they're all going to cook at the same time. This is obviously smaller than this, so I'm going to give this one more big chop. So now it's something like this. Yeah, that feels good to me. So now, bite-sized pieces, or as close to it as possible. I'm going to slow down and do one section at a time. Slightly more mindful. Slightly more demure. If you needed to chop your onion, this is when you would do that as well. Right now, I'm just going to toss everybody onto the sheet pan. Here comes approximately half of this chopped onion. So that's like 4 ounces. That looks like about 1 onion's worth of chopped onion. And you can obviously use whatever kind of onion you want, but I will always prefer the bite of a red or purple onion over a white one. So now, right onto my sheet pan, I'm going to go ahead and add 3 tablespoons of olive oil, just right over our veggies. And even though my recipe that I'm using does not call for seasoning, that would be a huge, huge tragedy right now. So I'm going to, at the very least, salt and pepper this. You can add sage, you can add oregano, you could add rosemary. Rosemary would probably be delicious in this. Whatever sounds good to you, but at the very least, I'm going to be using some salt and pepper. I decided to also throw in some garlic salt with parsley because this is just delicious on everything. I think that roasting anything, cooking anything without salt and pepper is typically a mistake. But especially a cruciferous veggie, a broccoli, a Brussels sprout, without some salt and like a ton of black pepper, what are you even doing? Like, that's a mistake. So now that everything's oiled up and seasoned, giving it a nice little toss to spread all that out, I might actually add one more touch of garlic salt just to make sure that everybody gets a bit. And I'm going to spread this out all across my entire sheet pan. Take up all the space. Give them as much opportunity for the air, the hot air, to circulate as possible, because that will mean more crispy edges. It will mean less sogginess. And I'm going to give the vegetables a 10-minute head start in that 400-degree oven. After 10 minutes, I'm going to lay my chicken right on top. I'm going to put everything back in the oven for an extra 20 minutes. So it's going to be 30 minutes of cook time total. You want to keep this cooking until the chicken reaches an internal temperature of 165 degrees. Because our chicken is so thin, I'm confident that that will happen within the 20 minutes. But if you have a meat thermometer, make sure to check. A very, very quick and easy way to avoid getting sick over a really silly reason. Friends, this meal is so easy, so delicious. How could you go wrong though? Like, the flavors are simple, but they go so well together. And obviously this is super versatile. If you don't like Brussels sprouts, use broccoli instead. You could switch out the seasonings. Do whatever you have to do to make it fit your wants. But I definitely recommend you try this if you're looking for an easy weeknight meal. And if you do try it, I'd love for you to come on back and let me know how you like it. Please make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe, click the notification bell, etc. because I post at least 3 times a week and I wouldn't want you to miss a minute. Thanks so much again for watching. Bye!